Yes, the relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Melissa Saintville posted a lengthy comment to her Instagram that reads, "So I'm taking charge and making my own decision in my boxing journey now because me going overseas is dumb. Because women's boxing and the politics don't respect real fighters like myself, the risk takers. Hyun Choi, I hear you want to fight me, so yes, I accept. Let's do it right here in the United States. Put that WBA belt up because me going to Korea is out of the question. Have your people reach out to my people." Now, these are just my thoughts on these comments from Melissa Saintville. You know, Melissa, she is a warrior. She is a road warrior. I don't think that can be denied by anyone who knows anything about this fighter, that yes, she has exhibited in the past that she's willing to travel. She traveled to Finland for that fight with Eva Wallström. She traveled to Belgium for that fight against Delphine Persoon. So she's not a fighter who's afraid of challenges, and she's not a fighter who's afraid to travel. But at this point in the juncture, you know, she's had about enough of that. And I gather that when she talks about the quote-unquote politics of boxing, I gather that she's talking about the Eva Wallström fight. I don't think she's talking about the Delphine Persoon fight, which took place in Delphine's backyard of Belgium. I don't think she's talking about that fight, because that's a fight where Melissa Saintville retired in her corner. You understand that? That's a fight where, you know, she didn't come out for the next round after, I think it was 6 or 7 rounds. So when she talks about the politics of boxing, I don't think she's talking about that fight. The fight I think she's referring to is the Wallström fight, a fight where Melissa feels that she got robbed. What was ruled a slip, in Melissa Saintville's opinion, should have been ruled a knockdown. And the overall decision, you know, Melissa feels that she did enough to win the fight, but she smells the home cooking. That's in regards to the Wallström fight, a fight that Melissa feels she won. Make of that what you will, review the fight, and come up with your own anecdotes as to who the victor should have been. But what we know with an absolute certitude is that Melissa Saintville feels that she should have won the fight. She's still raw about it, and she's all about done traveling to other fighters' backyards, other champions, for opportunities. So what she's proposing is that Hyun Choi, you know, they do something right here stateside. And these are just my thoughts on that proposition. You know, some time ago, Hyun Choi herself, the WBA super featherweight champion, she expressed that she actually does want to make a splash here. She does want to gain notoriety here. She does want to tap into the American market. So what better way to do it than to have a fight in America against an American fighter? I mean, that really would be the way to go. If you want to make a splash in the United States, you're not going to do it fighting girls over there in Korea. You know, people over here, they don't know nothing about it. So if you want these people over here to know who you are, well, you've got to fight over here against someone from
over here.
Someone who's from over here. I mean, that really would be the way to do it. I know that there are going to be some people out there that might think that, well, you know, Melissa Saintville, she just got a title shot and faltered, so why should she get another one? And to that, I'll say this. If Hyun Choi so decides to give her the shot, well, I wouldn't complain. She could give her the shot as a voluntary. You know, she could stage it as a voluntary title defense. Lord knows the WBA isn't ordering her to fight anybody. She doesn't have any outstanding mandatories, so why not? You know, get the goddamn thing done. I mean, Hyun Choi, she needs to be more busy. She needs to be more active, because out of all the super featherweight champions at the weight, she is the least active among them. This really would be the way to go, in a manner of speaking. That is, if she really does want to make a splash here. She's coming right off a successful title defense against Wakoko Fujiwara, and I dare say that Melissa Saintville is a more interesting opponent choice than Wakoko was, and better still, that fight with Wakoko went largely under the radar. I mean, I'd be surprised if anybody over here even knew about it, because it took place in Hyun Choi's backyard. If she really means to make a splash in this market, this is the way to go. This is the way to go about it. So, you know, here's to hoping that Hyun Choi is receptive and that the fight comes off. We'll see what happens. In other news, I'm sure that you guys have heard already, the WBC has made the Dillian Whyte versus Oscar Rivas fight for the interim title. That's saying that the winner of the fight will thereby become Deontay Wilder's mandatory challenger. This was something that Dillian Whyte was trying to get at for well over a year now. We've talked about it endlessly here on the channel, And now that the WBC have finally come around, you wonder if they didn't wait till the most opportune time to do so. That now that Dillian Whyte is in a situation where he's got a risky opponent in front of him, a fight that he could lose. Oh, now you guys wanna make this a final eliminator, you understand? Now you wanna award that kind of a status when he's in a situation that he may not come out of. You have to wonder if they didn't wait till the most opportune time to do so. I mean, if you ask me, that's what they did. They waited good up until Dillian Whyte was faced with an opponent that is a credible threat, a real and apparent threat to Dillian Whyte's winning streak. They waited good up until that moment to say, okay, we'll make it a final eliminator. You know, we'll allow it to be for the interim title. And it's mostly for two reasons. One, because they were running out of reasons not to give it to him. They ordered an eliminator between Brazil and Whyte, and it was Brazil that ended up pulling out of that. He pulled out to fight Wilder, obviously. And then they ordered an eliminator between Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte. And once again, it wasn't Dillian Whyte that pulled out of that. It was Tyson Fury. So they were running out of reasons to not award Dillian Whyte with that status or not afford the opportunity to him. They were running out of ideas. But better still, they did wait long enough.
They did.
They did wait long enough.
They did.
That Dillian Whyte is now in a very dangerous situation with a dangerous opponent. So even if that status is on the line, it may not even go to Dillian Whyte. You wonder why they didn't give it to him sooner. Months ago. You know, there was an order for Dominic Breazeale to fight Dillian Whyte, and it wasn't Dillian Whyte's fault that the fight didn't happen. Dominic Breazeale bailed on him. And we all know why. It's because Wilder became available to fight. So Dominic Breazeale chose to pursue his title shot. All of which is understandable. But better still, if that mandate from the WBC didn't get satisfied or whatever for Breazeale and Whyte to fight each other, because that came first. You know, Wilder was supposed to be fighting Fury in a rematch. The talks fizzled out when Fury crossed the street to the top-ranked side of the street. So that put the rematch on delay, thereby leaving Wilder available to fight. And Breazeale chose to fight him. Once again, understandable. But when that all happened, the WBC could have awarded Dillian Whyte mandatory status right then and there.
Months ago.
And you wonder, had he got it then, instead of now, would he even be in this Oscar-Rivas fight? Would he? It's a legitimate question. Had he already had that status months ago when he should have got it, had he already had it, would he be gambling it against a guy like Oscar-Rivas? And I dare say no. I think he would have took his foot off the gas, knowing that he's got an avenue to that title shot, to that Wilder fight. That if Dillian Whyte would have been awarded that status, a while ago when he was supposed to get it, he wouldn't have a guy, he wouldn't risk it against a guy like Oscar-Rivas. There wouldn't be any reason to. The WBC waited good up until this guy had a dangerous opponent in front of him to make that status available, only because they don't think he's going to win that fight. That's why. They don't want to give him the shot. You may be wondering, well, why wouldn't they want to give him the shot? Perhaps it's at the request of Deontay Wilder. Have you ever thought of that? Perhaps it's because Wilder don't want to give that guy the shot. You know that Wilder, he don't need for the WBC to make him fight Dillian Whyte. He could have fought him as a voluntary. He's got 9 title defenses. Only 2 of them were mandated fights. The other 7 were voluntary challengers, guys that he chose to fight. So it's not like the only way for Wilder and Whyte to have fought is via the WBC. Wilder could have just fucking gave him the shot straight away if he wanted to fight him. But Wilder, for one reason or another, and I still find it peculiar, because I think that Wilder's got the kind of power to knock Dillian Whyte out, but better still, he never gave him the shot. He didn't give him the shot. He could have gave him the shot. I think that if the WBC has been dragging their feet and awarding this kind of status or making it available for Dillian Whyte to fight for, I think that if it worked out that way, it's at the request of Deontay Wilder. That's what I think. They know that Wilder, he doesn't really want to deal with that guy for one reason or another. Maybe it's just the politics of boxing, but for, one reason or another, he just doesn't want to deal with that guy. And because they know he doesn't want to deal with that guy, they made that status hard for Dillian Whyte to get to. And by all rights, he should have got it months ago. And if he had, you do have to wonder if he'd be fighting a guy like Oscar-Rivas. Would he have chosen to fight someone like that if he already had that status? Woulda, coulda, shoulda. That's not what happened. That's not the way the cookie crumbled. It is what it is. If nothing else, this is an added incentive for Dillian Whyte to come out on top this Saturday. This will give him a reason to fight harder. That if he, if he makes it out of this, he'll get his shot at Wilder. It won't be for some months, because Wilder just fought his mandatory challenger, you understand. And he's got 12 months from that date to do whatever the fuck he wants. So it's not like if Whyte wins against Rivas this weekend, we'll see the Wilder versus Whyte fight inside of 12 months. The WBC, they're not going to order that right away. But, he'll have his avenue, and he can take it easy thereafter. It is what it is. None of this is painfully hard to read. It's really not. In other news, the people over there at Top Rank have orchestrated an outdoor boxing doubleheader scheduled to go down on August 17th. And, originally, it didn't really grab my attention until I saw that Jose Benavidez Jr. is going to be squaring off against experienced vet Luis-Collazo as part of the card, as part of the doubleheader. This will be Jose's first fight since having lost to Terrence Crawford months ago. And I'd have to say that given the characteristics of both Jose Benavidez and Luis-Collazo, the experienced veteran that is Luis-Collazo, I think that that's going to be a real treat. That might be a little bit of a gem. You see, neither Jose Benavidez or Luis-Collazo, they're not your chess-playing, finesse-fighting kind of fighters. Those are guys that like to throw punches. They're both very aggressive guys. So when you get two aggressive guys in the ring with each other, what you're going to get is a barn burner, and I think that that's what we're going to see in that fight. Also on the card is the WBO champion Emmanuel Navarrete coming right off his win over Isaac Dogboe, what is his second win over Isaac Dogboe, and his matchup is not as intriguing as the aforementioned matchup between Luis-Collazo and Jose Benavidez Jr. This is an opportunity for Jose to bounce back. He's only got one career loss at the end of the day. One loss doesn't spell the end of the man's career. This is his opportunity to bounce back in a big way against a guy who really can pose some resistance. A lot of times people look at the number of losses on a professional fighter's resume and they don't think that he can pose much resistance, but don't let those losses fool you. Luis-Collazo is nobody's patsy. He may not be in the upper echelon of the welterweight division. He may not be one of the usual suspects. I understand all of that, but that doesn't take away from his ability to put on an entertaining fight. And I think between Jose and Luis, that's what you're going to get. That's what we're going to get. We're going to get an entertaining fight for however long it lasts. Because I don't think this thing is going to go the distance. I don't. This thing's scheduled to go 10 rounds, and I think it has the makings of what could be an entertaining little fight. Don't take it out of context. Take it for what it is. That as far as 10-round fights go that aren't for a world title, yeah, I think this is a decent matchup. I really do. Because you look at the size of Jose Benavidez. You understand? This guy's about 6 feet tall in the welterweight division. How many guys at 147 stand in at 6 feet fucking tall? Not a lot. I can't name that many off the top of my head. Think about that. It's a real big, physically imposing guy, aggressive guy. He's got respectable power. You think about that. You look over at Luis-Collazo, who in many ways is kind of a Ray Beltran to a lesser extent, because, well, let's be honest, Ray has been a champion several times throughout his professional career, whereas Luis-Collazo has yet to have held a full version of a world title. But the correlation between the two is that they are these older, grizzled, tough veterans that when they step in that ring, they really come to lay it all on the line. They really come to fight. This guy's not just showing up for a check. Luis-Collazo is coming off of 3 consecutive victories, and, a lot of people forgot, he iced Sammy Vasquez, for those of you that don't remember. So, he's still got stuff left in him. He's still got a couple more fights left in him. I think that him and Jose have, that they could put on a good fight. I will say that I am leaning towards the younger and more statuesque fighter in the fight. I am leaning towards Jose Benavidez to win this thing. I just don't think Luis is going to make it easy for him. But, we'll talk more about that fight as the fight date approaches. All in all, as far as 10-round non-title fights go, yeah, I think this could actually be entertaining. And finally, Teofimo Lopez had this to say ahead of his upcoming fight this Friday against Nakatani, what is an IBF eliminator for a shot at Richard Commey's red belt. He had this to say. He says he'll be able to make 135 for a few more fights. And I gather that those few more fights he's talking about are obviously this Nakatani fight, what could be a Richard Commey fight if he emerges victorious this weekend, and subsequently what could be a fight against Vasyl Lomachenko, which could end up being for all the belts, because, Vasyl Lomachenko may have 3 at that point, whereas Lopez may have 1. There was some fear that Teofimo, being a young guy whose body is still growing, he may outgrow the 135-pound division. That's an understandable fear. People don't want him to leave the weight class having not had that fight. There is some demand. There are fans clamoring to see a young guy, young undefeated guy with real punching power square off against Vasyl Lomachenko. That, at least right now, that's the stiffest test, or one of the stiffest tests, that the division has to offer for Vasyl Lomachenko, who's just blowing through, and really has been blowing through, his competition. People want to see him tested. If this guy's one of the best in the world, we want to see him, test that out against these kinds of credible threats. That's how some people view Teofimo Lopez, as a credible threat. And I myself do too. A young guy like that, young disrespectful guy like that, who he's not going to kiss Vasyl Lomachenko's ass. He's not going to sit here praising him. He wants what he's got, and he's willing to take it from him. And I like that. That makes for entertaining fights. Now you think about what's in front of Teofimo Lopez, who he's got to get through to get that Lomachenko fight. This weekend he's got to fight Nakatani. Guy's about 18-0. 12 KOs, okay? So we're not talking about some journeyman opponent who's on the ass end of his career and he'll service as an experience fight, as simply an experience fight for a young up-and-comer. That's not what Masayoshi Nakatani is. What he is an undefeated contender, the same way that Teofimo Lopez is an undefeated contender. And you may or may not be aware of this, but this guy's actually pretty statuesque for the weight. He stands in at about 5'11" in the lightweight division, 135 pounds. So this is a tall drink of water as far as lightweights go. And you may or may not be aware of this, but Masayoshi Nakatani has won his last 4 fights consecutively by way of knockout and or technical knockout. So at minimum, the guy can punch. We don't know that he's got a comparable punch to Teofimo Lopez, but for all intents and purposes, he's no pillow-fisted fighter either. And for Teofimo Lopez, he's got, 13 pro fights, most of which don't go to distance? He needs this kind of experience against this kind of an opponent, who offers some of the same challenges that Teofimo would thereby face in Richard Comey, provided that Teofimo wins this weekend. That Nakatani, he's statuesque. He's got comparable physical dimensions to a Richard Comey, and Nakatani, he is a bit of a puncher. We know that Richard Comey is a puncher, so this is a good prelude, an appropriate warm-up to what could be Teofimo Lopez versus Richard Comey. It's the right kind of situation for Teofimo to be in, given that in spite of how flying flashy and exciting he's proved to be, he still doesn't have very much experience. So these kinds of tests really are necessary if he means to fight a Vasyl Lomachenko inside of 2-3 fights? Oh yeah, he needs to rack up as much experience as he can while he still can make the weight. So keep your eyes peeled for this on Friday night, ESPN, Teofimo Lopez versus Masayoshi Nakatani.